Hello everyone, I'm Michael Wynn, Production Sound Mixer, and today I'm going to be talking about RF spectrum analyzers on film sets and give you some of my experience on that. And in addition to that, I'm also going to be giving you a demo with the Tiny SA Ultra, which I have here on the second camera. So I can share with you some of my workflow and thoughts on this particular process. So just want to say thanks for being here and great to see everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. First things first, let's talk about what I'll be covering today. And we're going to talk about what is a spectrum analyzer. So most of you who watch this channel are familiar with scanning and spectrum analyzers and how they work, but probably if you're like me, you mostly use scanning for coordination and RF management in your workflow. We'll also talk about some of the benefits of scanning versus a continual spectrum analysis, such as an RTSA. Then we'll talk about some practical models for bag and cart use. If you're like me, you use cart and bag. It just depends what I'm doing, within a given project. And then I'm going to get into some samples of some workflows that I've developed. I've been using spectrum analyzers on film sets probably for the last year. I've worked with a couple different models. And a lot of these aren't necessarily designed for production sound mixers, but through learning how a spectrum analyzer works, I've discovered some workflows that are common amongst all the varying models. So let's see here and go back to this. All right. And then if we have time, we'll do a little bit of a Q&A. So before we get started, I wanted to mention I have a brand new course called Wire Like the Pros, which was a collaboration with Brittany Myers, who is a member of my sound team on projects, and she is an amazing sound utility. And just to kind of give you an overview of what this is about, really what it does is it breaks down the whole process rather than just giving you demos of different types of rigs, which is extremely powerful, and you should watch as many of those as you can online. We go through the full process from prep to working with other departments to script breakdowns and share with you that experience of what it's really like to wire and be successful on a high pressure film set. So go check that out at mwsound.net. And let's go ahead and just get right back into what we're here to talk about today, which is spectrum analysis. Okay. So what is a spectrum analyzer? Well, it's a device that's used to measure the level of the RF signal across a specified bandwidth. All of us are familiar with this. If you have scanned on a receiver, if you use, let's say, Shure Wireless Workbench, maybe you're a Sound Devices wireless user or you're Electrosonics wireless user like me using Wireless Designer, typically there's a scan involved and then there's a coordination process. You might be working on workflows where you're working with a wireless coordinator for a major event and getting assigned frequencies. But a spectrum analyzer allows us to see all of these frequencies in real time. So here's an illustration, an example, so we can see what a scan looks like in fixed time versus a continuous sweep. So both of these are scans here, at my studio, and it's 470 to 608. And a scan is pretty much what I've done most of my career. And then I'll coordinate the wireless to go with that scan. Typically, I don't work with an RF coordinator on a film set. I work in narrative. So basically, I'm looking at the environment and choosing the best possible frequencies for my wireless. And that's usually a scanned fixed frequency and time, which works 98% of the time. But a continuous sweep allows me to see some very specific information, and which really segues us into the power of an RTSA versus, say, like a scan workflow using a coordination software. And if someone comes on to a film set, for instance, like an EPK crew, and they fire up a wireless, you may or may not see that on your specific software, but on an RTSA, it will show up depending, providing your frequencies your start and end are within the bandwidth of where that wireless is. But it also tells us some other things. In my experience, it also tells me when my receive antennas, let's say you're using the LPDAs or shark fins, log periodic dipole arrays for you technical folks. If those antennas, say, are too close to a Wi-Fi transmitter for a lighting system, I have seen on a spectrum analyzer the effects of that on frequency bands that were nowhere near that 470 to 608, because they were all the way up in 2.4, yet I was seeing things on my frequencies. So moving those antennas made a difference. The other things you're going to see are your receive antennas being keyed by a walkie, meaning is there a walkie in stepping on your receive antennas, meaning do you need to adjust the position of those antennas to deal with those sort of walkies? Maybe add filters. But the RTSA allows us to see all of this, whereas the scan doesn't necessarily catch these things. So let's go in here, see to our next slide. And there we go, right here. Okay, so why haven't we always used spectrum analyzers on a film set? Well, providing you know what they are and that they exist, not too long ago, probably within the 5 years, most of the spectrum analyzers were large, heavy, complicated, and very expensive. As you can see here on the left is a Rhodian Swartz, very high-end spectrum analysis tool. That's a lab-grade, expensive machine. On the right is the RFNU RF Explorer Pro, which is a unit that I've used for the last almost a year now, which is DC powered, very lightweight, and also has some additional features built into it that will help with coordination. So that's kind of where we're at right now and what has changed. So let's talk about popular brands and models. If you watch this channel, you know that, this is not, I'm not sponsoring any of these companies, and I'm not promoting any particular product. Really, this video is about spectrum analyzers and film sets. So some of the common models and popular models that I'm familiar with are the Tiny SA and the Tiny SA Ultra, which is what I have here is the SA Ultra, which we're going to demo a little bit today. Shure has their own rack mount RTSA. And as you can see, this one's AC powered, but it could be great, I'm sure, and used in a live application or in a cart where you're going to have AC power and other Shure equipment to integrate on a network. TX Advanced is another very popular one. It requires the Android platform is not compatible with the Mac OS because Mac OS won't allow the dongle that's necessary to read the RF environment to function. So that's why that particular app is on the Android only, but it's still a very powerful tool that has a RTSA plus coordination built in, and RF Explorer Pro, which is another amazing tool which I've used, and it has very basic frequency coordination that they're developing over time, but a very powerful RTSA with some other features such as power channels, zero span, advanced marker placement, and things that really align with the type of things that we do. Because an RTSA doesn't just measure the RF levels on a spectrum. It also has other built-in tools, which we're going to look into. Okay. So we're going to look at some of the workflow examples with the TinySA Ultra, because I want to give you some insight on how it is that I use this. So I'll talk a little bit about kind of, how this came up for me. I really wanted to start learning RF a little bit more than kind of the fundamental and very powerful knowledge that I've been learning as a production sound mixer from all of the awesome manufacturers out there. So I ended up doing a course at Georgia Tech on RF fundamentals, which was put on by Rodian Swartz, who made that big, massive machine earlier. Ended up meeting some hams, and then ended up getting my Part 97 FCC license, which is a amateur ham operator as a technician, which has been a humbling experience to realize how much it is that I have to learn about RF, and really kind of ignited my passion. So, going into that, I purchased the RF Explorer Pro. I started using that on a film set. I used it on a full TV show for about 4.5 months. And then recently purchased this TinySA Ultra, which is an RF spectrum analyzer that a lot of ham operators use. And this thing, if just right out of the gate, it's not a sales video, but a couple things I'm going to mention is it's under $200. And the accuracy and measurement on this device is incredible, especially considering the price point. It goes all the way down from 50 hertz to 6 gigahertz as far as its bandwidth is concerned, and has many powerful features. But one thing I will say is I will put a link down below to this particular brand, because the TinySA Ultra is under many different brand names. So many different manufacturers make this product, and there are some fakes out there. So you want to make sure that you purchase the right one. Don't just go, oh, wow, I found one of these for $39. I'm just going to get this one, because you might just be disappointed on what you get. Okay, so let's get right into the demo here. So here we go. Let's see here. Okay, working with presets. Now we get into the cool stuff. Okay, so let's go here and turn on this camera. Okay, so when I power up the TinySA, I do it right here at the top, and I know the frame is dark, but it's just a simple switch. And I've got the default set to be 470 megahertz to 608 to power up. And as you can see here, you've got the RF spectrum, and then you've got some information here on the left that's important, like I'm using dBUV as far as my scale is concerned. And then I'm also using a low noise amplifier as well, because wireless signals like we use are typically very low power, so an LNA is something I want to have turned on. And I also have the unit fully calibrated. So presets. So here in the presets, I've got 4 different presets loaded here I wanted to share. The first one that you're seeing is 470 to 608. And then the other one, which we'll take a look at later in our next subtopic here, is my coordination preset. And as you can see, there's 8 markers here giving me real-time measurement within this probably 13 megahertz range. That looks incredibly tight, but there's actually a megahertz between each one of those transmit coordinations that I have right now. And then the other preset I've loaded is probably one of my personal favorites, which is the guard band and duplex gap. So what you have here is a 614 to 616 and a 655 to 665 split into what's called multi-band. So this particular unit here has a multi-band switch that you can see I can actually skip everything from 616 to 655. So I'm looking at just what's separated by this vertical line. Now we'll talk about the horizontal line as well here before I show you the next preset. So if I go to display, see this draw line? If I do this, I can actually choose the threshold where I think it's going to be okay to put wireless. So right now I'm on a dBu scale, so I'm just going to choose 15, and actually I'm on a dBm scale on this particular preset. That's why it didn't work. So let me go back here and load 47608 and show you that one more time. I'm going to draw a line, and I'll put it right at 15 dBm. And as you can see, this line here shows me where I can coordinate. So that's a very, very powerful tool that you'll see obviously in most coordination softwares when you do a scan. Like I use Wireless Designer, excellent tool for what I use, and I set a threshold in which I'm going to let the system coordinate wireless. Which brings us to our next specific topic. So the important thing to know here is presets, and working with presets, and that you can save presets in here for specific band widths, that you can actually use multi-band, such as this, ISM and STL. Let me show you that on the screen real quick. Let's see here, kind of navigating everything. So this is ISM 902 to 928 and 944 to 956 STL. Why that's important is the multi-band allows me to split this spectrum into multiple things. And you might be saying, well, what is this red line here along with your green line? Well, what that is that's a max decay trace. So ISM, if you're familiar with ISM, what it does is it basically uses 902, 928 kind of like a frequency switching to carry the signal, like the Betso locket boxes. The TCX2s use the ISM band 902 to 928. The Astera lighting instruments use that on film stats, and you'll see it bounce around. So by using the max decay here, I can see when those little ISM hits. See how they stay there just for a second. I'm in a residential area, so it's interesting that I have any ISM activity in here anyway, because I don't have any locket boxes on or anything like that. So presets, you can do different frequency widths. You can also choose your trace, meaning you can set like a threshold line and also split into different bands. So I think I covered that, and I recapped it a little bit. So let's move on to the next topic here. All right, let's go to Keynote here, and then navigate. I'm getting all my quick keys ready for you guys. All right, so now let's talk about coordinating with markers. Now, this is kind of a work in progress for me, but let me show you what I've worked out thus far. So, all right, so let's go here, and let me get the screen right so you can see what's going on. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to a preset called Coordinate. And you'll notice that you have all of these markers showing up here. Now, one thing to understand is that there's also a couple different traces here. So let me just remove one of the traces, and the trace is the lines, different types of I think it's a purple. All right, let's get rid of that one. Now we have one trace on an average, and traces allow you to calculate, like do different types of ways to look at the spectrum. So right now you'll notice that it's very slow versus like it was faster. That's because I'm doing an average. It's just visually easier for me to see. So you'll want to experiment with different types of traces and average. There's also quasi-peak, which is more of a straight line, different speeds of averages. This thing is amazingly powerful, and we're just touching the surface. So if I want to work with markers in this particular case, as you can see here, each one of these frequencies are actually showing me the noise level in dBm of the signal. And I also have my threshold line at minus 95 dBm. And then, which is a very aggressive threshold line. That would be like ultra clean wireless. If I wanted to get a little bit, I needed to put more channels and I don't want to be quite as hardcore about it, I could go to the display here and go to the draw line and change that to minus 90. Let's do minus 90. And then, as you can see, I have a lot more available now. Markers by default on most spectrum analyzers are going to be tracking markers. Secondary markers are going to be what's called delta markers. But for my particular case in coordination, what I've done is I'm going to go into markers here, and I'm going to modify markers, and notice here that tracking is deselected on all of my markers, and so is delta. So what that means is I can easily move around my markers like so. And another kind of important thing to get here is that you see this little 13.8 megahertz. There are 10 grids inside of a spec-an going left to right. So each one of these is 13.8 megahertz in width. So obviously, as you can see here, I can take this marker and move and see how that number 1 is actually moving here. I know that this TV band starts around 490 and then ends around 508, and that's 2 TV bands because those are 6 megahertz each grouped together. Here's 2 more TV bands, and sometimes by moving these markers helps me see what's going on this grid, which is a 138 megahertz span. So if I wanted to see this a little closer up for coordination, well, I need to kind of figure out where I am on it. So I'm going to go, say, 555 to, and I'm just using these markers to show what kind of span width I need to do, to 572. So we'll go frequency, we'll go start 555 megahertz to 572. Okay. So now we can see a much better view of all of these channels of wireless. Now, look at the span of each one of these grids, 1.7 megahertz. Now, I typically like to put the spacing of my electro digital channels in D2 mode. I'm conservative. I'm going to do a megahertz each. You know, they say you can do 600 only if I have to, but even a megahertz is pretty tight. So but let me show you how you can easily pull that off. Let's say, so by going here at marker 1, we can put this at 558 400. So we'll come into here, search, enter the frequency 558.400 megahertz, and that one is coordinated. Now I'm going to take all of these markers and I'm going to move them along each grid. 6, 7, 8. In a perfect world, all of those would be coordinated just by moving them around the grid. But on this particular one, I have to do an extra step. And that extra step is I have to get them in 25 kilohertz. So I have to see 561.739 should be 561.750. So let's go ahead and put that in. 561.750. Boom, done. And then I can even look here, 559.884. We're just going to go ahead and put that on 555.900. And I go search, and then 559.900. Make sure I put in the right stuff, and so on. So now, once I enter all these into the exact frequency where I need to be, then I've got a full coordination. And this particular device too allows me then to save these traces and these markers to the micro SD card. And I'm not going to go too deep into this yet, but I want to show you that the markers are an incredibly powerful tool for coordination. And you can also see how your wireless is doing together. I'm sitting here realizing there's so many things I could show that are amazing in this video, but I'm learning and just unfolding this process. And you know, I've done some stuff on social media where I think I did a post somewhere where I showed HDM mode, and I put, I want to say 5 transmitters in a 1 megahertz you know, spectrum, and showed how they were propagating. So I would be able to physically measure any transmitter source on this unit. Very, very powerful tool. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. All right, so we'll go coordinating with markers. And up next, if I can get this to actual respond, that would be good. There it is. Okay, there we go. Multi-band views. So I'll recap that one more time. We covered that earlier, but just since I have it here on the slide, let me go ahead and show you one more time because it's really that cool. So multi-band views on this particular thing, and I'll show you the overhead camera in just a second, allows me to separate the bands. That vertical line that you see right there, that is 614 to 616 and 655 to 665. Sorry about the focus. But I'm splitting these into bands. And this was probably my favorite feature so far as I'm learning and discovering this. So you can see the span is 12 megahertz, but 614 to 616 is here, and 655 to 665 is here. Very, very powerful tool using multi-bands. Okay, let's see what's next. All right, and okay. Oh, I think that was it on that particular one. Okay, I'm trying to think what else I want to cover on this. I want to make some time for some Q&A. I need to keep this to 30 minutes today. But I wanted to give people an opportunity if they had any questions. I see we got a couple people here to ask any questions on using a spectrum analyzer on a film set, because I think it's a very, very powerful tool, and I'm very excited about it. And I'm just getting started on this, but there, you know, this needed to be talked about in the production sound community, how powerful this tool is. Because this could fit in any bag, any production kit. Now, you know, the RF Explorer is another tool I want to put a plug in for. A little more expensive, around the $1,500 range, but has a much larger screen and a little bit more a feature set that's specific to production sound mixers. But what I like about this is the more you learn about a spectrum analyzer and its features, the more you can start to connect the dots with how it can help you with wireless coordination and wireless performance using a spectrum analyzer on a film set. So that about wraps things up for me. Just want to say hi to a couple people who showed up here. Zlatko, it's been a moment. It's so great to see you. Glad you're here. And Dan, fancy new presentation. I appreciate it. I tried to be a little bit more organized with this. And thanks so much for being here, guys. And if there's no other questions, I think I'm going to wrap this up. And, you know, once again, if you haven't had the chance, please check out my site at mwsound.net and our brand new course, Wire Like the Pros. You can preview and see all of the videos and descriptions of the videos, and also watch the introductions of both. So I definitely encourage you to do so. And I just want to say thank you, everyone, for being here and attending the stream. And I'm signing out, and I look forward to seeing everyone real soon. Thanks so much.